Good evening, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, from wherever it is you're watching. My name is Eugene Okumu, here to take you through another edition of the Google News live trainings for online. This is the third phase that we are taking you through. We've had two prior phases early in the year, and so this time around, we're bringing you more exciting and extremely useful tools that you can count on to get through a good chunk of your online work. So today's session will be on elections and election coverage. As we know, there's a good number of countries in the region that are having elections this year. Of course, Tanzania went to the polls yesterday. The results are still being tallied. We have Seychelles going into elections later in the year. We have Ghana, of course, as well going into elections. We also have Namibia that will be going to the polls. We have Niger, Namibia, Central African Republic, and Burkina Faso, to name a few of the countries that will be going into elections this year. And so it's quite ideal that this lesson comes in at this point in time. And it is the hope that you will get some good insights out of it. As I've mentioned, my name is Eugene Okumu. I'm News Lab Teaching Fellow for the Sub-Saharan Africa region. If you have any questions as we go along, feel free to post them in the live comments section. But otherwise, if you have questions that come up afterwards, feel free to reach out. My email is eugenepatrick@google.com. All right, so just before we get into today's coursework, we will have a quick look at what has been done already for the third phase and what is to come for the third phase of the online live trainings. So we have done Journalist Studio. This is a collection of a suite of tools that are specifically created with journalists in mind, and they're tools and technologies that help you work securely and creatively. And we had that session last week, or Thursday, at 2 p.m. GMT time. In case you're interested in finding out more about how that session went, feel free to log on to the Google News Initiative YouTube channel and check out the Sub-Saharan Africa playlists for how that and previous training sessions have gone. Today we'll be focusing on elections, and these are tools to help find, visualize, and protect election coverage. Then on November 9th, again at 2 p.m. GMT, we'll be looking at remote collaborations, and these are tools and tricks to optimize newsroom collaborations. And then after that, November 23rd, we'll be looking at podcasts and why and how to ideate, then iterate and evaluate. Then we'll be proceeding to data and machine learning, and this is building machines and learning models. And this is going to happen on December 7th as well. It's going to be at 2 p.m. GMT time. Then we'll conclude our third phase for this year with the verification and fighting the scourge of fake news with a host of tools that are also available in the journalism studio. And that will be on the 21st of December, again at 2 p.m. GMT time. So feel free to diarize these dates. As well, look at the Google Africa Twitter handle for these dates and notifications on when Apologies for that, ladies and gentlemen. We experienced a bit of a technical hitch, but we should now be good to continue with the session. Thank you so much for your patience. So as I was saying right before the interruption, the Google News Lab conducts operations along 3 pillars. And the whole inspiration of why and how the pillars of related is to strengthen, to build a stronger future for journalism. So we do this through elevating and strengthening quality journalism. And this is especially with due regard to a lot of other publishers online that are not necessarily trained in journalism or do not adhere to a code of ethics and conduct, as is the case with the journalists who are certified by the respective journalism organizations. So this is why we work closely with credible news organizations to elevate and strengthen quality journalism. The second pillar is evolving business models, and especially with respect to driving sustainable growth for news organizations. So news organizations are getting assistance on a regular basis from Google on how to ensure that they have income streams that they can rely on to fund their day-to-day activities. Then the third pillar is empowering news organizations through technological innovations. And the tools that we'll be looking at today are some of those innovations that we work in collaboration with the journalists and other organizations to be able to provide these tools, mostly free of charge, so that journalists can count on the technological support from our organization. So a quick rundown of some of the tools that we have, some of which we'll be looking at today. We have Advanced Protection Program. This one enables you to ensure that only you have access to the accounts you use for your work to be done accordingly. And then we have the Common Knowledge Project. This is sharing of information through a collaboration of projects from various organizations. Then you have Project Shield. This one just protects your resource so that your websites, for example, are not prone to attacks from bad actors who are trying to censor the kind of information that news organizations provide. Then you also have Fact Check Explorer. Fact Check Explorer generally debunks, is a platform that enables you to find out if information that is being distributed online has been debunked or has been verified as factual and accurate. And then you also have Flourish. Flourish is a very robust and very useful data visualization platform, and has many templates that you can use for a variety of kinds of storytelling. And we'll be looking into that as well today. Then you also have Google Trends. Google Trends basically enables you to understand how people are searching for information online. And sometimes it also has the effect of giving you insights on information gaps that you might then decide to work on as a news organization, so that people get the kind of answers they want for the questions they're asking. We also have Outline. Outline is a secured VPN network that enables your websites to stay active even in the event of a censorship, as has been seen in the past with the elections. And you have Pinpoint. Pinpoint is a platform that, a research platform specifically built for investigative journalists, and it has the benefit of enabling journalists to go through volumes of information in the shortest time possible. So think about 20,000 documents or thereabouts. You can quickly sift through them, and the platform filters the information through 3 main pillars, which is location, people, and organizations. This was last week's lesson. Feel free to check it out on the YouTube, on the Google News Initiative YouTube channel, so that you get up to speed on the ins and outs of Pinpoint. To learn more about the various tools and skills on offer, g.co/news training is the address you want to follow. There you'll find thematic courses that you can sign up for, and these are designed to help reporters to find and verify and tell news stories online. The courses range anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes, and as has been stated, they're thematic. So you can go in specifically for what is of interest, and it does not take you a long time. And once you're done with the courses, you can quickly go through the quiz at the end of it. If you score 100%, you can then proceed to download certificate for your effort. Right, so as I mentioned, we're looking at elections, and elections are a huge component of a lot of the information that we see online. And as such, as an organization, we've come up with elections.google. This is basically a platform where people, voters, can find insights on elections. News organizations can also find information of interest around election coverage. Then campaigns can also benefit from the platform through understanding how best to protect information going online about their respective campaigns. The address for this is elections.google. I'll quickly jump into the web page so that we can see how what that looks like. Right, so this is what the platform looks like. Some messaging from the organization. We're committed to supporting democratic processes around the world. So voters can engage through the platform. We also protect elections through the platform. Then we are equipping campaigns as well. And you can also opt to have updates about some of the activities that we're running. So here you can drive voter engagement by surfacing key information in search, providing collaborative developer tools, raising voter awareness. You can also look at protecting election information online. And this is mainly through safeguarding campaign from digital attacks, providing safer access to the internet, and combating spread of misinformation. Then you can also help campaigns manage digital presence, stay up to date on the topics that matter, showing up where they're searched, using videos to connect with voters, and reaching constituents through digital advertising. And then you'll have a section on the latest from blogs and some of the works that continue to put out around elections. And then some of the partners that we've worked with, Election Databot, Crosscheck, Verificada, and simplification of voter registration, among a host of other partners. And as mentioned, the whole idea behind elections.google is that we're working to ensure that access to information is guaranteed, voter sensitization is done, and as well, campaigns can protect themselves from digital attacks in the event that somebody tries to bring down a site that voters are generally relying on when gearing up to make a decision and participate in a civic exercise such as an election. All right, so we'll then transition into protecting your election. And here we have a host of other tools that are also available. g.co/advanced protection. So advanced protection program offers Google's strongest account security for those that need it the most. And this is especially important in the event where you find, say, journalists working on certain elections. And sometimes what happens is that people's accounts will be attacked. And as such, the goal is to ensure that There's multiple layers of protection, the strongest of which Google itself uses, so that people are guaranteed of the safety and integrity of their accounts in the course of covering election processes. So if I can quickly demo how that works, the address, as you've seen, is g.co/advanced protection. And I will open the demo page for you so you can see what that looks like. So this is a advanced protection program. This is what you see on the landing page once you've signed into it. This is Google's strongest security, and it helps you keep private information safe. So you can then learn how to get started with that. And it also helps defend against targeted online attacks. It prevents unauthorized access to your account. So if you think about the two-factor authentication, two-step authentication for your account's access, provide extra protection from harmful downloads. So it will scan for malware and for phishing attempts as well, so that you're guaranteed safety of information. Your personal information is also secured, because sometimes people will then compromise your accounts and then send out your information to parties that should not have the information. And then advanced protection at work, just ensuring that even within the organization, your account privacy is ensured. So it's a very quick process. It takes just minutes to enroll, and then you can use security keys on your Android devices as well as your iPhone to ensure that you're not compromised. You can also use physical security keys that are then required for when you're logging into your computer, your accounts, so that even in the case of theft of your devices, the security key guarantees that people will not have access to your information. So defend against attacks with advanced protection. As mentioned, the URL is g.co/advanced protection. Right, so we'll then move to the next example of how you can protect your elections. Right, so the next is g.co/phishing quiz. Phishing is basically falsified information targeted towards accessing an account, and that is to say, somebody might have your password. Somebody might send you something either via mail or a text message with a request for certain kinds of information. And this is also seen as having happened a lot with telco, and especially in Kenya, where they have mobile M-Pesa. So M-Pesa has in the past registered a lot of complaints around people having been contacted by individual companies masquerading as representatives, asking for verification of certain information, at the end of which a person may have divulged security details for them, and thus are then compromised with respect to with respect to how people then can access and transfer funds from their accounts. So g.co/phishing quiz. Check it out and have a look at whether you can effectively identify some of the ways in which the phishing attacks take place. Next up, we also have Outline. This is a platform that's geared towards creating a virtual private network for news organizations and their readers, with the goal of ensuring that even internet services are taken down in the respective country, there's still access to the platform because the virtual private network ensures that the website is cached independent of a country's domain, so that readers can still access it, and news organizations can still publish to their websites. This one, you basically do it through downloading the outline manager and following instructions on how to set up a server. It's a very seamless and simple process. So you don't need extensive know-how of tech to be able to set this up. And then once you have installed and the manager, you can add devices to the VPN by creating new keys, and the keys are shareable with the respective audiences that you're interested in reaching. You can then paste the key into Outline and connect, and you now have a virtual private network that ensures that your readers stay informed about the ongoings around elections. The purpose of this, of course, is we've had multiple instances of websites being taken down, even some major publishers. So the BBC, based in the UK, in 2015, was taken offline. Wikipedia has also been taken offline by distributed denial of service attacks, and the cause of concern for some of these platforms being taken offline is that some of the denial of services attacks are very simple and are easily available online, and therefore anybody can purchase DDoS online and then deploy the attack. The sad reality right now is that even a very small attack can cause major damage, least of which is access to information when it is needed. But it can also then create a situation of uncertainty, which in multiple elections has proven to be a catalyst for civil unrest in countries where information is key to maintaining a semblance of maintaining stability in the country. Next up, we're going to look at Project Shield, and Project Shield basically also defends publishers from attacks on their platforms. The use for this as well is g.co/shield. I'll quickly jump into that demo. And the whole motivation of it as well is just to ensure that in the pursuit of truth and accurate storytelling, publishers are protected from external infractions against their service. So this is a free service that defends news organizations, human rights organizations, and election monitoring sites from denial of distributed denial of service attacks, as I have explained with the previous example. So this is created by Jigsaw and Google, and it provides free and limited protection against DDoS attacks, which censors information from websites online. So the eligible parties, as I've mentioned, are news and independent journalists, human rights organizations, election information and monitoring organizations, and political organizations. So what it does is it protects against attacks from malicious traffic. If your website is targeted, the servers will block the traffic that is trying to take the website down, and it keeps the website up and running. And it also reduces traffic costs. So Project Shield can be configured to fetch content from your website servers once and serve a cached copy of the subsequent requests. This reduces traffic to servers and absorbs potential attacks. So among the features that you can get are unlimited protection against advanced attacks, customizable caching, custom defenses, and real-time site analytics. Then you'll also get feedback from people who've used the service. And then you also have a guide on how to set up the shield for your platform. Apologies for the hum that you can hear in the background. Still part of the technical issues that hopefully will resolve as we go. So back to the presentation so that we can continue with the session. So covering your elections is the next part. Previously, we were looking at protecting your elections. And as you've seen, we have an advanced protection program, we have outline, and we have Project Shield. So these are some of the ways in which we enable participants to an election, either journalists, news organizations, or voters, to be able to follow the information provided for the election, irrespective of attacks that may occur on the content. So next up, we'll go into covering elections, and here we have an example of covering candidates. So the example on screen is of the US elections and some elections happening in South America. So in the early days of any elections, there's several candidates vying various seats throughout the process. And so sometimes you also want to give fair coverage to all candidates, and therefore we can achieve this through using one of the platforms that I mentioned in the Journalist Studio. The name is Flourish. It's a robust data visualization platform with several templates that you can use to cover multiple categories of news and information. It just depends on what it is you want to cover at the particular point in time. So I'll quickly jump into a demo of how that works. Feel free to ask questions in case they do occur. To any concerns that you might have as we proceed with the session. So this is what Flourish looks like when you log in first time. The URL is flourish.studio. Then examples, pricing, and sign up. It also has announcements for vacancies. There's a blog, there's a company and developers. So we're interested in looking at how it works. So for today, we'll sign in to the platform. So on screen, if you're signing in for the first time, this section will usually be empty. But because I have already worked on certain templates in the course of my training, it is available. So these are what I will see because I've worked on multiple examples from the training. But we're interested in creating something that looks like what we have, what we saw on screen for candidates. I'll take the example of the elections happening in Ghana, and I've gone ahead to create a spreadsheet of some of the candidates taking part in the election, and this was something that was created earlier in the year when the final list of candidates had not been settled on. So we'll be looking at, so this is what that looks like. The basic spreadsheet. And for information on data mining, we can head over to g.co/news training for the various courses on journalism. But this is what I've created for today's session. So I'll quickly show us how to use it. Right, so once we have keyed in all the information required, in this case we're looking at presidential candidates from earlier in the year, when there was the field was still full of hopefuls for respective nominations. So I was just correcting one of my links. It seems not to be active. Right, so once you have your table populated, what you usually want to do is you will then proceed to download the document as a comma separated values. So we'll have that for the current sheets. And then once it downloads, you can then head over into Flourish. And when in Flourish, you want to click on New Visualization. And then it will bring you all the templates available. Like, as I mentioned, you have a variety of templates depending on the kind of output you want. You have projection maps in case you're telling region-based stories. You have scatter maps to show elements of how volumes of information move. You have 3D maps also based around geo stories. Then you have hierarchy maps when you're showing comparative analysis of numbers for a particular category of information. You have marker maps in case you want to plot custom icons onto an existing map. You can use that. And you have bar chart traces. These also work to show how information in comparison changes over a time period. So what you're interested in today is cards, and we're going to click on profile. But just before I click on that, I can show you. So we have also snaky diagrams, we have connection globe, we have heat maps, you have line chart traces, you have photo slider, radar charts, tables, chord diagrams, network graphs, parliament charts, election result charts, sports as well, and slope charts, arc maps, quizzes, and surveys. And these are regularly being updated with the feedback from journalists as well as other organizations on what kind of outputs they would like to have for their news coverage. So on screen we have an example from the template. These are Democrat presidential nominees from earlier in the year. It shows the full field of various candidates who wanted to fly the Democrat flag up. So what we're interested in when keying in the information is the data option. So when you click on that, it brings you a spreadsheet with some information already uploaded onto it. So we'll go ahead and click upload data. Then we'll select the spreadsheet that we created and then click open. And then it will ask if you want to import the spreadsheet data. It will replace the current sheet's new data. So we'll go ahead and click import data. Shows 18 new rows. So the next one is to select the columns. So we click on that. And right away, you can see that there's already a preview for what we uploaded for the various presidential candidates that we have uploaded. So a few things to note here. You can look at the various output options you have. So that's what it looks like on desktop. That's what it looks like on a tablet. And then that's what it looks like on mobile. So it's just a question of whether the layout favors the kind of platform you have with respect to the images used, so that you can then decide to change that if there's something that will not be visually appealing. For the images, you can settle on aspect ratio for them. You can settle on how wide they are. You can decide whether it's a fill or a fit, and then you can tweak the horizontal and vertical placement of the images. You can select a color. For example, here you can easily decide you want to go with the green as the color we are using. And then you have more options for colors, you have more options for layouts. And then you can also add information in the header. So for example, say Ghana's field of potential hopefuls. And as you change that, you can see that the text reflects the changes we've made. Then you can also have a subtitle and say, these are the 18 As soon as you're done with that and you hit enter, then you can see that the text changes. You can also have text added onto that. You can change up things on the border, and then you can enable a logo for the news organization that you represent. And that usually appears towards the top, or you can actually decide the placement of it, top, left, and then right. Apologies for that, I had not changed the screen. Let me just add the screen I was working on. So this is in Flourish. If I can quickly recap what I have been displaying. So this is the document we created on Google Sheets. So it has 3 columns. You have the first column with the presidential candidate. The second column has the links to images for the various candidates, and then the third column has the name of the political party. So in preview mode, this is what it looks like. So you have the candidate and the name. So a few things you can do here. If we go back to the data layout, we can have we can settle on the name of the party. So under subtitles, you can have C to represent the column where the party names are contained. And if we head back into preview, you can see that the parties now appear under the candidates. And as I'd mentioned, you have various outputs, visual outputs for the information. So here you can see what the layout looks like if you're viewing this on a tablet. And then on desktop, that's what it looks like. So in case the visuals do not particularly appeal for what you want to do, you can then change those. And then you have 2 options. You can either display it as a grid or you can display it as a carousel. So the carousel just has a side-by-side layout for all the candidates, and as well you can preview what that looks like on a tablet, or on a mobile device. So it is entirely dependent on what you want the visual outlook to look like. Once you're happy with how you've formatted the visual, you can then go ahead to export and publish. And then it will tell you it's not published, and usually this changes color depending on the stage of accessibility that the visual is at. So if you press publish to share and embed, it will usually ask you if it's if it requires a password to open. So this is in the case that you're sending it in a private network. But because this one is public, we can just go ahead and hit publish. And then, as I mentioned, the drop down will usually change color depending on the stage of accessibility where the visual is at. So here you can see it is published. You have an option of codes to embed in your website. So you can use a script, which is recommended. You can have an advanced mobile page, AMP. Sorry, accelerated, not advanced, accelerated mobile page. It will usually give you dimensions. You can tweak those to suit what your mobile site looks like. So it usually gives you an iframe for that. Then you can also finally just pick an iframe direct from here. And then you also have the option of downloading HTML or downloading image. But because this is a visual with multiple elements, downloading an image would just give you a static layout, which might not be ideal for your purposes. So that's the ins and outs of Flourish. For more information on visualization, feel free to check out g.co/news trainings. There you'll also find some additional coursework on visualization. So I'll now quickly jump back into the presentation so we can carry on with what I had prepared for the day. Right, so the next platform that we're looking at is g.co/fact checking. And as I had mentioned, this is a searchable index for fact checking from reputable partners. And it's especially important, and especially around elections, to be able to have a platform where you can check whether any claims being made about candidates or happenings around an election have already been debunked. A lot of instances have been reported of old information and photos resurfacing to show a skewed story. So I'll quickly jump into an example of how the platform works. Right, so that's the platform, Fact Check Explorer. You have the option of the Explorer where you can search for information that has already been fact checked. You have the markup tool in the event that you want to post your own fact check to the Explorer, and you also have APIs. So we are interested in Explorer, and if we can look at information about Ghana elections, for example, let's see what has already been fact checked around it. So there was a claim that Ghana's Electoral Commission had postponed the 2020 elections to 2023 due to the coronavirus. So this is Ghana Fact Check that has looked into the story, and the rating of the claim is that it is false. We can quickly jump into the article itself and see what it contains. So that's the website itself. Ghana elections not postponed due to coronavirus. So it will break down the source of the claim. In this case, it was an online platform, newsmonews.net, with an undated and unsourced short article titled Coronavirus Wahala, Electoral Commission postpones 2020 elections to 2023. So you can see the kind of disenfranchisement that might occur with this information staying online without it being looked into. So Ghana Fact has gone ahead to debunk the claim and then show the source and give a verdict. So research has been done into the credibility of the platform itself, and it shows the cases of reported coronavirus, the number of reported coronavirus cases as of May, as the basis for the information, as basis for the postponement of the election being announced. And it also ties in other major events globally that had been cancelled on account of the virus. So the fact check then concludes that the information is false. The Electoral Commission has not, in fact, pushed forward the election. So, as I mentioned before, fact check is a pretty handy platform to start off on in case you want to find out whether information you're looking at probably has fallen across your desk, and you might want, you might be urged to disseminate it to your readers, but then you have to also ensure that the information is accurate. So we'll then proceed with the presentation. So we have the next segment covering Google Trends. And trends is basically understanding how people look at information, how people search for information online. And trends are broken down into 4 categories. You have location, you have language, you have topic, and you have a time span. So I'll go ahead to open up the trends landing page. And then we can see some of the ways in which the platform can be used when finding out information around how people are searching for content online. So this is what you see when you log into Trends for the first time. It will usually give you the location in which you're going to be accessing trends. In this case, I've selected my home country. In the drop down, you have many other countries you can pick from. So it just depends on the area of interest that you want to present information on. So a few other things to note. You usually have examples that have been generated just as a way of showing what the platform can do. There's 6 different examples on screen. We'll go ahead and jump to the 4th. So that's what that looks like. And then depending on where you're looking at accessing trends from, and depending on what country domain you have keyed in, you usually also have information in that country that has high volume of interest in search, and therefore a card is made for it so that people can access it without necessarily needing to go into exploring the options. Then underneath that, you also have recently trending, and this is a snapshot of indices for what people are looking at around the country. Kenya Power, for example, is the electricity distribution company in Kenya, and the past 2 days have registered multiple instances of power outage. Therefore, this is why people have an interest in looking for information about Kenya Power. And if we click on that, you quickly see related news about the coverage from various sources. So some as old as 20 hours ago, then you have more recent ones. So that's how you can then have a look at what is trending. And then we can go into the menu and look at the explore option. So the explore option is where you can get to see a lot of interest around, or you can get some more information around a particular search term of interest. In this case, we can look at Nana Addo, who is the president of Ghana. We can click on that. Then we can go ahead to select his main challenger. Former president of Ghana. So once we have those two selected, this graph generally generates the visual for what we have typed in. It shows you results for the past 12 months. It will generally give you results from worldwide in all categories and web searches. So you can go ahead and click on the drop down for location and select the country of interest. So in this case, you want to go to Ghana. So we'll click on that. Give it a few seconds to load. So the visual changes as we continue to filter it. We'll go with the past 30 days. See what the graph will tell us about how the candidates have been being searched in the last 30 days. And then we can go into categories and we can see, we can choose a category. Let's go for law and government. See how the two topics compare with respect to law and governance. And as you can see, each time we activate a filter, the visual layout of the graph changes. Then we can also go into new searches as a source and see what that looks like for the topics. So sometimes, depending on whether there's enough volumes around certain sources, certain categories, a particular time duration, or a particular country, then it will usually show you a null result for the visual. So here we can see what that looks like. We can tell that one candidate has had more such interest in relation to the other for the particular duration of time we're looking at in the particular country and in this particular category. So if we scroll down as well, you'll see the areas where the candidates are most searched, and you can have this as sub-regions or as cities, depending on whether the content is made available in that option. In this case, we don't have an option for cities, so we'll go back to sub-region. So you have the visual here, and when you hover over any region on the map, it will then give you information about how the candidates are being searched in the respective regions. Then if you scroll to the bottom, you'll also see additional information about how the candidates are being searched. You can see that for the time duration we've selected, John Mahama is mostly searched in the Greater Accra region. So one of the other things you can do with this particular visual is you can then go ahead and embed it. So you have the script here, you have the visual on the right side of the pop-up. You can choose to keep the data updated, or you can uncheck that box and have it as static data, so that in the event that the data changes in this duration, it will only show the static information at the point of interest. You can also opt to keep it updated so that any changes reflect without you needing to then update the. So a few things to highlight is that The trends will show you indices of search, and that index from 0 to 100 at the maximum. So at 100%, what it's showing you is value of interest in search relative to the term that you're comparing. It does not mean that, for example, on October 9, 2020, the only thing that was being searched was Nana Akufo-Addo. It just means that for the comparison we're making between Nana Akufo and John Mahama, on 9th of October 2020, Nana Akufo had more search interest than John Mahama. So that's important to clarify at this stage, just so the numbers don't become confusing. All right, so back into our presentation. And as I'd mentioned, you can use a variety of or a combination of tools to really highlight what's happening with a particular interest, search interest. I'll quickly open an example like I created again around the Ghana elections, just so you can have a clear picture of how that visual can be created. Platform is taking a bit of time to load, but as soon as that's ready, we'll be good to go. All right, so while that one gets ready, I can just quickly talk us through how you can then generate certain data points between some of the platforms we already have. So the on-screen example is showing Google Trends data, and then also looking at Flourish, host rest chart. And what happens with this is you can download the data from Trends as a CSV file. Then you can upload that onto Google Sheets, where it will organize the information in rows and columns with the various titles. In this case, we're looking at date and interest in search over time. And then once you have that ready, you can use the horse race chart template in Flourish, and you can then create a visual such as this one. For more on that, head over to g.co/news training. you can look at how to visualize data using data journalism and data visualization lessons in Flourish. Right, so trends will generally create visuals for information depending on the region and depending on the information that is of interest to people who are searching for the information at the time. So in this example, Ireland will have its elections coming up soon, and therefore in Ireland, if you head to trends, you will see this visual layout. So this is only done where where there's where there's enough volumes of interest to be able to put up the information in this manner, and where there's such interest of that high volume. So visualizing election results is our next section. You can do this through the Google Data GIF Maker, which creates simple comparison visualizations. On-screen examples, you're looking at, for example, peanut butter and jelly and people comparing interest in either of the two. You can also see, if you like superheroes, there's Batman and there's Superman. I can quickly show us how that one works. There we go. So you have up to 3 different templates that you can use when you want to compare visuals. So the 3 templates will compare up to 4 different terms at a go. It's a very simple visualization platform, but it creates a very visually appealing visuals, and these ones can enhance quality of engagement with a particular story. So you have the rectangle. If I can click on that, you have you can add the terms that you want to compare. You can decide on the value type either as a percentage or as an absolute number. Then once you're done creating that, you have previews, and then you can save and download the visual. Then you can have a thematic selection. So it just depends on whether you want circles, rectangles, or a racetrack. So if we can quickly generate an example for the F1 fans in the house. Then, right, so we'll put in absolute numbers for number of points. These are not actual numbers. These are just for example purposes. Right, so you can also change the colors depending on what kind of visual output you want to have as your final. Right, then once that is done, it's just a question of playing it, and it shows you what that looks like. So you can add a title to it. And then once you're done, you can opt to have it as low quality or high quality. The high quality takes a bit more time to develop, but it gives you better visual output, and especially with social sharing, so that the quality is not as adversely affected by the compression element of social platforms once you then create, once you share the visuals to the social platforms. So that one will then open up into a separate browser window, and or tab, and then you can download it to your local storage once that is done. Right, so that is still generating, but you get the basic idea of how that process of populating the template goes. So now we'll jump back into our presentation. Right, so these are just some of the other examples of templates that have been used. We did see something about geomaps that are available on Flourish. We also saw Parliament templates. These ones you can use for elective processes where you want to show the composition of Parliament along party lines and the likes. Then you also have projection maps, and you have sliders as well. So projection maps say you want to show population of various regions within a country. You can use this platform to show that. And with sliders, you can also show elements such as deforestation or mining activities or urbanization of various places. These are all available on our news training platform. g.co/news training is the link to use. You have various courses on environmental journalism, but also on visualization. So you have multiple ways in which you can visualize election data using Flourish, and there's many examples within the blogs. As I'd shown us, you can check that out on flourish.studio. There's instructions on how you can visualize elections. Right, so to learn more about the tools that we've been looking at today, g.co/news training is the address to go to. You can sign up for the thematic courses designed to help your reporting by helping you verify and tell news stories. If you have questions about a tool, feel free to reach out to newslabsupport@google.com. If you have any questions about today's session that may not have been answered during the live stream, eugenepatrick@google.com, that's my email address. And to learn how to use the tools, g.co/news training, that's the link you can follow. Or if you're curious about the Google News Initiative, g.co/news initiative is where. So the next training session will be on remote collaborations, and that comes up on November 9th, 2020 at 2 p.m. GMT time. You can also request for trainings to individual newsrooms via the email address I've shared, newslabsupport@google.com. Thank you so much for making the time to follow today's session. I have been your facilitator, Eugene Okumu. Next session will be on remote collaborations. That's on November the 9th at 2 p.m. GMT time. I hope I'll see you then. But for today, thank you so much for making the time. And as always, it's a pleasure to take you through these tools. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good evening.